We are rolling.
Good morning. Welcome back to the conversation. This is Midlife Crisis Activities. This is our lifestyles and pop culture webcast, our daily shout out to the world. I'm your host, Patrick Russell. And over there is my very vivacious producer, Veronica. Together, we're here to lend our voices to the noise from a multi-generational perspective to help explain everything's right and wrong in this world. Happy Hump Wednesday to you, Veronica. I've got a I am woman, hear me roar type of story to talk about this morning. We've got... Back in September, the House of Representatives passed the 2022 NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because it's got a special provision in it, something that has not been done in this nation before. It will now require women to register for the selective service. The selective service, as you recall, is that requirement that at this point, young men in the ages of 18 to 26 register with this database, this big, long contact list, if you will. Should the United States, God forbid, ever enter into a war or into some type of military engagement where a draft would be necessary, instead of just men being drafted into the military, it will now, if this act passes, it still has to go to the Senate before it gets to the president's desk. But if this act passes, it will now require women, as well as men, young women, 18 through 26, to register and be potentially eligible for the draft should the time come. Now, let's just stop there. From a younger generation's perspective, Veronica, do you think we are ready as a country to put our young daughters, sisters in harm's way, where not only could they get killed, oh no, there are worse things than death. There's captured, raped, tortured, used maliciously against your own unit to demoralize them, to make them to do something stupid like try to rescue you, as opposed to accomplishing the mission. I ask you, from a younger generation's perspective, is the United States ready to put their young daughters in harm's way?
Gosh, you know me, so I'm always talking about equality. So I think that will be not fair in this webcast to say, you know what, Patrick, no, we're not ready. You know, this is not fair. I do believe that we are ready, and we do have to make the effort and change what we have to change to make sure that women also, you know, register and follow the steps. I do believe that we have to follow a plan, just because as women we have other things that can affect, right? We're more exposed to getting raped, more exposed to, just that.
It's a reality.
Yeah.
It's something that we do have to answer honestly. Are we ready to potentially see that? Because that's exactly what putting women in combat areas, in battleground situations, could potentially lead to. And that's always been the opposition's main complaint.
1 second. So I know men also can get raped, obviously, but I think we're more exposed as women to do so now. My answer
we're able as a society to stomach and accept those kind of intrusions on a man, on a brother in arms. The question remains, can we stomach sister in arms being put under the same type of torture situations? Could we be able to continue on with the mission knowing that Private Sally is with the enemy and with who knows what's being done to her right now? And so that's the opposition, and there is a strong vocal opposition, as you can imagine. Most of the opposition, you can imagine, also falls on party lines, right? More progressives who are liberal-leaning tend to approve of this measure. More conservative, traditionalists, trying to keep everything the same and keep Sally in her white picket fence home with her 2.5 kids and her dog, Rusty, is how they would like to keep life. And, let's face it, that's always been the more conservative argument, is that we'd like to keep things the same because they're opposed to change, right? And they're opposed to breaking any of those traditional social norms, men being the breadwinner of some kind, and then women being the homemaker. I mean, that has always been the traditional mold and clay family values that conservatives wish to continue on. And anything that opposes that is fundamentally wrong. And of course, sending little Susie off to war is a complete fundamental contradiction to those values, right? Okay, so you have the normal characters that are in play. Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, screaming from their conservative, self-righteous hilltops that body weight percentage, muscle to fat percentage, the odds that the strength of the opponent who might be male versus the female, the American soldier, they bring all of this up, mind you. That would be now their statistical, empirical argument that they're now making. All right. If we can't say it's because, women belong in the kitchen, all right, we can't make that argument anymore. It's no longer the 1950s or 60s anymore. All right, so now the new argument is, there's a body fat differential that has to be recognized that makes this a really bad idea to have women in the battlefield, right? Which is, of course, not true. It's a power trip, once again, right? You're talking about sexism at its finest. You're talking about chauvinistic values to try to keep the other sex down. Why? Because in the military, in order for you to get some of the higher positions in that organization, you need to have combat experience. So how far can most of the females who are making a legitimate career out of the military get if they're not able to get the experience they need to get to the higher branches of the executive ranks of the military without the combat experience? So there's that argument there, is that, listen, if we're strong enough and smart enough to be leaders of men, you need to give us the experience in all theaters, in all circumstances, so that we now have the resume to contend from some of the big leadership positions that we have yet to see any females sit in those positions, right? So you have a hate, a misogyny that's in play here that's being, of course, masqueraded as protecting traditional values, but in all reality is, once again, the powers that be trying to suppress those that are trying to raise up females in the military in this case, and women in general, that I believe that is being recognized in this new NDAA Act of 2022 that needs to pass through the Senate, and that's what's happening now. They're going to be deciding on it probably in December, and hopefully by the end of this year, beginning of next year, it passes, gets onto President Papa Joe Biden's desk, signed into law, and now we see yet again one more glass ceiling broken in our generation's lifetime. I love that. From a younger generation's perspective, how do you see it? Do you see it as a negative where we're putting women into harm's way, where the nation's simply just not ready? Or do you see it as a momentous and necessary step forward for women to progress in their quest for equality in this crazy thing we call life? Last words on that.
I think I'm going to have to come back again with another webcast to kind of refresh my ideas, because if you were to ask me right now, I do believe that is the time for us to be equal. And when I say equal, I'm agreeing with everything, right? Because we cannot be equal in one size and then not on the other one. Per se, we talk about abortion, the right of me to decide, right? So if I want equality on that regards, and then obviously I have to agree with everything equal, right? Now, I do think I do think that it's very smart of our country to enlist every woman, just because if the time comes, we can always decide, okay, I got enlisted, I don't want to go, but the other one wants to go. So we can have more control over who's going, who's not going, instead of waiting at the end and saying, okay, we don't have any more men to fight, and then now we have to just get whoever. So now is the time for us to kind of plan ahead.
Absolutely.
And then
with China on the horizon, we're going to need all hands on deck, men and women.
And I'm pretty sure, I can say, you know what, put me on the first line, or you know what, I don't want to go, put me at the end. So I think now it's the time to make to have control. And once again, also
Make changes.
It's very interesting what you just said about what range can I go into, right? If I
How
get enlisted.
far in the military you can go
how
up
far?
without the combat experience.
So I do want that. Obviously, if that's gonna be the case where
It's
I have
practical.
to get enlisted,
Common sense.
let me make sure that I get to the highest if I'm capable, if I'm organized, if I can accomplish something like that. So I think my answer will be yes. I agree with what it's probably going to happen, and just to plan ahead.
Final note. This is an ongoing conversation, and I think there's more meat to this bone. We're going to come back around, and we're going to debunk some of the arguments that the conservative side have brought up in the past, to include, can women really pull the trigger or drop the bomb or push the... Oh, I know. I've seen Latinas mad. Trust me when I say they'll be more than able to drop the bomb on you.
Last point. So Ted Cruz, it's saying, oh, I don't agree because, I have 2 daughters. What about if he didn't have daughters? Will he change his mind? Because let's face it, we expressed and we said things based on our current situation. So Ted Cruz, I don't like you. But once again, do you think he will change his mind if he didn't have daughters? And he will say, you know what? Yes, let's enlist everyone and move forward.
You know what I think wouldn't change or would change? Is if his political donors believe that their daughters should be allowed to enlist into the selective service, then guaranteed Ted Cruz would flip-flop and says, sign my daughters up.
Probably.
Let them be the first ones in line. Guys, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but there's definitely your opinion. Please don't just subscribe to the channel, even though we will be doing this back and forth, supporting women's rights whenever we can, but add your voice to the show to make it a whole lot more fun. Guys, it doesn't matter what comes your way this beautiful day. It doesn't matter what obstacles or challenges you may face. You just need to remember one thing. Give them hell. Happy Hump Wednesday, everybody.